get everyone's cameras ready and make sure that the audio is working. Sounds like it works great. But if everyone who can take a seat, there's still some seats in the front if you'd like to come on up. We are going to live stream in about 1 more minute is when it starts. So 10 seconds, guys. We've got 10 seconds. I'm over here. I don't have an earpiece, so I don't know what's going on back there. All right, we're ready to go, everyone. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of Supply Chain Insight, powered by CargoNav, your digital tool for end-to-end cargo visibility. I'm Stephanie Montoya-Mariski, Director of Communications and Community Relations for the Port of Long Beach. Today, we're launching the Port's new Cyber Defense Operations Center, a state-of-the-art facility that protects data and technology to ensure the safe movement of trade through the San Pedro Bay complex. We'll also take a look at the cargo numbers of April, along with the rising cost of fuel and doing business as a result of the Middle East conflict. In just a moment, I'll introduce our Port of Long Beach CEO, Dr. Noel Hacegaba. Today, we're also hearing from Long Beach Harbor Commission President Frank Colonna and U.S. Coast Guard Rear Admiral Jeffrey Novak, who will share their thoughts about cybersecurity at the port. After their remarks, we'll open it up to your questions. If you are joining us remotely, please use the Q&A feature to start submitting your questions now. We'll take the questions in order with some priority for those joining us in person, but it is best to get your questions in as soon as possible. Please be sure to include your name and media outlet affiliation. And a reminder that after the conclusion of the event, the recording will be available on the Port's YouTube channel, youtube.com/Port of Long Beach under the Live tab. Now, let's bring on our official MC, Port of Long Beach CEO, Dr. Noel Hacegaba.
Good morning, and thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, all of you, for being here. Welcome to this special edition of our monthly Supply Chain Insight Media Briefing, powered by CargoNav, your digital tool for end-to-end cargo visibility. I'm joined today by President of the Long Beach Board of Harbor Commissioners, Frank Colonna, and also the U.S. Coast Guard Rear Admiral Jeffrey Novak. And I'm going to have these gentlemen come forward at this time. They're going to have some remarks in a moment. Admiral? Yeah. And in the audience, we also have a number of representatives from the U.S. Coast Guard, Cal OES, and all of our partners from the Area Maritime Security Committee. And I want to thank all of you for being here as well, not just for what we're about to announce, but for your ongoing leadership and partnership, because when it comes to security, we do it together. Thank you all for joining us for the launch of our new Cyber Defense Operations Center, or CDOC. We all saw how universities across the country were crippled with a recent ransomware attack on Canvas. The Port of Long Beach is no stranger to hackers trying to infiltrate our critical operations. Let me begin with a startling statistic. The Port of Long Beach blocks or stops an attempted cyber attack every 3 seconds. Let that sink in. In the last 5 minutes since the start of this briefing, our cybersecurity experts have shut down 100 cyber attacks. The work that our security team does is so important to keeping the Port of Long Beach safe from cyber attacks that could disrupt the flow of $300 billion in annual trade and 2.7 million jobs across the United States. And that's why today's launch of our new Cyber Defense Operations Center matters for the Port of Long Beach and also for the regional and national economy. CDOC represents the Port of Long Beach's latest initiative to strengthen our cybersecurity capabilities. Through the use of enhanced technology, our CDOC is capable of detecting cyber attacks and disarming threats to our digital infrastructure. It also doubles the number of professional personnel dedicated to combating cyber threats. And what sets our new CDOC apart is its ability to bring cyber operations and harbor patrol under one roof. An incident that starts in one domain moves seamlessly into another. Now, most ports with cyber teams keep those worlds separate, The Port of Long Beach runs them as one operation. This center allows us to sustain world-class cybersecurity defenses and protect critical data networks to keep cargo flowing and the economy moving as we develop the port of the future. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce the President of the Long Beach Board of Harbor Commissioners at the Port of Long Beach, who will make a few remarks, President Frank Colonna.
Thank you, Noel, and good morning, everyone. What a powerful group of guests we have today, and of course, it's an important time for us as well. On behalf of Long Beach Board of Harbor Commissioners, I want to thank you all for being here, of course. I also want to thank our partner agencies for the role they play in keeping our port and our nation's supply chains safe and secure. Today, we're proud to celebrate the opening of the Cyber Defense Operations Center, or CDOC. Today's threats are not only on the water or at our gates, they are digital and they are real. Right now, there are bad actors who are trying to disrupt the operations along the global supply chain, as our CEO had just indicated many, many times, hundreds throughout the day. There are also bad actors trying to keep the port from operating safely and provide their great numbers of cyber attacks to us. We have seen the headlines. We have heard about ransom attacks. We also are aware of rising numbers of GPS jamming busy waterways and threatening safe navigation. These are criminals who want to access our systems to sow chaos. We cannot and will not allow that to happen. That is why the Port of Long Beach invested in CDOC, a top-notch security facility, and placing it in first place. With the CDOC, we can deploy the latest technology to locate and disarm cyber attackers. We can build dynamic strategies to meet our ever-changing cyber landscape, and we can dedicate more people to keeping America's cargo secure around the clock. Because we are too important today to let America's economy fail, we will succeed in our accomplished goal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Colonna. Your leadership and the support of my entire Board of Harbor Commissioners is very much appreciated, especially when it comes to important initiatives like these. You know, one of the unique aspects of our new CDOC is that it enhances the port's ability to closely collaborate with partners such as the U.S. Coast Guard, sharing best practices and providing more coordinated communication. And to tell us more about this, I'd like to introduce now U.S. Coast Guard Rear Admiral Jeffrey Novak. He's the commander of the Southwest Guard District and the Pacific Area Deputy Commander. Admiral?
Well, good morning. Thank you to the Port of Long Beach and the Harbor Commission for your leadership and for inviting the Coast Guard to be part of this significant milestone. I've had the honor of being the Southwest District Commander for almost 10 months now, and the partnership between the U.S. Coast Guard and our partners here in Long Beach and Los Angeles has been rock solid, so thank you for that. When the Commandant of the Coast Guard describes where we operate as a service, in priority fashion, he names 4 places in particular. That is the Western Hemisphere, the Pacific, the Arctic, and cyber. So 3 physical spaces in cyberspace as a whole domain. So simply put, cybersecurity is national security. The collaborative work amongst our partners in both the public and private sectors is the true foundation of our ability to secure our ports and waterways against any threat. So this state-of-the-art Cyber Defense Operations Center is the physical embodiment of that foundation. The Coast Guard is responsible by law for controlling, securing, and defending the marine transportation system within ports like Long Beach. And with so many integral ports across the United States, a cyber intrusion here in the nation's busiest port complex could cause profound global financial disruption. And that risk is only accelerating. As our partners integrate artificial intelligence and rely more heavily on operational technologies, systems such as those that control vessel propulsion, those that control cranes, and other systems by which we schedule and move cargoes, the potential attack surface that the adversary can take advantage of only expands. So, by opening this center today, the Port of Long Beach is taking proactive steps to ensure that trade flows safely and securely. So I'd like to say congratulations on this outstanding achievement, and thank you for the continued partnership between the Coast Guard, the Port of Long Beach, and the Harbor Commission. Indeed.
Thank you so much, Admiral, and you said it best, right? The partnership is rock solid, and in the 10 months you've been in your role, you've been very, very busy, you and your entire team, and we're so grateful for that. We appreciate your leadership, the U.S. Coast Guard's partnership to keep our port complex safe. A cyber-secure port is one that can concentrate on its core mission, and that is moving cargo. So now let's take a look at our latest cargo volumes. Last month, the Port of Long Beach moved almost 818,000 TEUs. That's our third best April on record. That represents a 5.7% dip from April 2025, which was our busiest April in history. Long Beach dock workers and terminal operators handled nearly 390,000 TEUs in imports last month, down 7.1%, while exports soared 26.7% to nearly 119,000 TEUs compared to April 2025. Empty containers fell 12.6% to 309,000 TEUs year over year, and with the increase in loaded exports, ships could not take as many empties back to Asia. A ship can only hold a finite amount of containers and weight. Now, as a critical link in the supply chain, the Port of Long Beach's connection to the global economy is vital. Just 2 weeks ago, the Port of Long Beach saw the arrival of a new Corolla. That was the last California-bound oil tanker that crossed the Strait of Hormuz before the start of the conflict. The state of California imports about 30% of its oil from the Middle East, amounting to about 200,000 barrels a day. Here at the Port of Long Beach, about 20% of our oil imports last year arrived from the Middle East, while the majority of crude shipments came from Alaska or a country in South America. The conflict in Iran is already reshaping shipping routes and raising costs that are ultimately hitting consumers through higher gas prices. And as energy costs rise in the wake of the Middle East conflict, we expect to see more cost pressures across the business sector. For example, automakers and beverage companies are contending with higher aluminum prices. And that's because roughly 9% of the world's aluminum comes from the Middle East, prompting businesses to adjust their financial outlooks and come up with contingency plans to keep costs down. Toyota has said its suppliers are setting higher prices for the materials Toyota needs to make vehicles. Prices can only be guaranteed for weeks rather than months, as was customary in the past. Spirit Airlines shut down earlier this month, citing the recent, quote, sudden and sustained rise in fuel prices. Analysts estimated Spirit's costs would have risen $360 million by the end of the year with elevated fuel prices. Meanwhile, container lines say bunker fuel supplies are tightening, and congestion is up at fueling hubs overseas. Just to give you one example, Hapag-Lloyd says its fuel costs have gone up by $50 million a week. These numbers and anecdotes tell a story of an unsustainable situation. The 21st century economy runs on energy. Rising fuel costs are strengthening the case for energy diversification and independence. And that is why the Port of Long Beach is acting now by investing in zero-emissions equipment and clean shipping and truck corridors. We are building the Port of the Future today, making it more sustainable, competitive, and secure. Meanwhile, a growing number of companies are incorporating digital tools into their operations. And while these tools have the ability to enhance and cost save, every technological advancement comes with some risk, as you heard from the Admiral. For example, Canvas, an educational platform used by more than 30 million users across the world, made headlines recently when hackers infiltrated its system and stole data. The supply chain industry is not immune to these attacks. Let me give you some statistics. In 2025 alone, the number of cybersecurity incidents in the global maritime industry soared by 104% compared to just a year earlier. The average financial impact of ransomware attacks came to about $500,000 per targeted organization. Cyber attacks involving foreign national governments also known as state-sponsored attacks, reached a record high in 44 U.S. states, with more than 227 major incidents. Cybersecurity is more important than ever, and the global supply chain must be vigilant. It's also important that we remain resilient and vigilant when it comes to security from physical attacks. Media outlets are reporting heightened threats that could potentially disrupt the FIFA World Cup events across the U.S. As one of only 18 commercial strategic seaports in the U.S., the Port of Long Beach has a duty to support force deployment during national defense emergencies. The Port of Long Beach also has a duty to keep the nation's cargo safe, and we rely on many partners to do this, all of you in this room, and many more. That is why we commend the U.S. House of Representatives for advancing the Combating Organized Retail Crime Act, or CORCA, this week. President Colonna and I were actually in Washington, D.C., and we witnessed passage of this important piece of legislation. Cargo and retail theft disrupts supply chains, drives up costs for businesses and consumers, and undermines confidence in the movement of goods. As one of the nation's busiest trade gateways, we appreciate the bipartisan support from House lawmakers to strengthen enforcement tools that help protect America's goods movement network. Our CDOT plays a critical role in preventing organized crime from accessing information about cargo make up through cyber breaches. And the Port of Long Beach is more than ready for potential threats and lend the help necessary to keep our nation and the American economy secure. So thanks again for joining us. Now I will hand it back to Stephanie, who will help facilitate any questions that you may have. Again, Admiral, Mr. President, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Noel. So now we'll take some questions for the Admiral and for Dr. Hacegaba. If you're online, please sure to state or include your name and media outlet affiliation. Kate Kirkendall, our Assistant Director of Communications, is handling those questions online. She will cue me if we have one. But for now, is there anyone in the audience that has some questions? Kate, is there one online for us?
Yes. So, hi. Our first question is for CEO Dr. Noel Hacegaba. Noel, what drove the port's decision to open a specialized cyber defense center? Was there one attack in particular?
That's a good question. Thank you for that. As you heard, in today's environment, it's clear that we needed to create a concentrated unit dedicated to monitoring and controlling the growing threat from illicit cyber activity. There was no one instance that drove this decision. Rather, it was a constant stream. As you heard me say, on average, one every 3 seconds is what we stop when it comes to cyber attempts. And that prompted this move to ensure that we are doing everything possible to strengthen not just our port, but to strengthen our national defense and protect the flow of goods that supports the national economy.
Thank you. Our next question is for U.S. Rear Admiral Jeffrey Novak with the U.S. Coast Guard. All right. How does the Coast Guard's cyber protection team function to strengthen the cybersecurity of the port?
So the Coast Guard has multiple cyber protection teams that we've stood up, and they're nationally deployed and available. We have one just up the road in the Bay Area that can press into both, let's call it, helping industry and facilities evaluate the state of their cyber protection. So things as simple as coming aboard and helping look at what antivirus protections are in place or other means by which we secure the infrastructure for both operational technologies and informational technologies. And then in the case of a cyber attack or an incident, in coordination with other partners and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Coast Guard is able to come and take a look at how an event occurred and help those facilities both address whatever loss may have occurred and then strengthen for the future. And so that is done by our cyber protection teams. Again, we have one here in California in the Bay Area, but also multiple others across the nation. So thanks for that question.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we have another question here for CEO Dr. Noel Hacegaba. And that question is, does the port anticipate that the bad actors out there will choose other targets rather than try to come after the port systems?
We cannot control or predict what the bad actors will do, when they will do it, what they will target. And that's the reason why we're doing everything we can within our control to make sure that we're strengthening and fortifying our cyber defense capabilities. And that's what CDOC's all about, is taking that next step, taking what we've already built together in partnership with the U.S. Coast Guard, all of our security partners, to make sure that we're leaving no stone unturned and putting every resource we have available to make our port, our complex, more secure and safe so that we can continue supporting the 3 million jobs across the nation and $300 billion worth of goods each year.
Please don't go away, Noel. I have one more for you. This one is from John Donegan from the Long Beach Post. He says he's asking about the total cost of establishing the Cybersecurity Defense Operations Center, and also who is paying for that cost?
The total cost to date is $3.5 million, and that investment is going to be made over 3 years. And keep in mind that the CDOC is not something we started from scratch. We're integrating different systems that we've had in place for some time that have been successful in stopping cyber attacks 1 every 3 seconds. So our investment brings these systems together, brings the physical coordination, the people coordination, I like to say, bringing our different systems together. But it'll be a $3.5 million investment over 3 years.
Great, thank you, Noel. And another question, a little bit of a change of topic about cargo volume. When it comes to April cargo volumes, what caused the reduction in volume? Was it something to do with the conflict in the Middle East?
Yeah, that's another good question that we get often. When you look at our cargo volumes and how we report the numbers, the benchmark is always the same month the year prior. So we're comparing April 2026 with our strongest April on record. And if you remember last year, the first 4 months of 2025, the story there was shippers trying to get ahead of new tariffs. And all that front-loading activity actually catapulted the Port of Long Beach to our best year on record. Last year, we handled almost 10 million container units. This year, we're beginning to see a retrenchment to what is typical. And the fact that here we are 4 months into the new year, and notwithstanding the headwinds emanating from the energy markets reacting to the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, notwithstanding continued uncertainty surrounding trade policy and tariffs, the fact that we're only 5.7% down off of a record run is solid. So it shows two things to me. Number one, the resilience of the American consumer. That is that we continue to buy and we continue to generate that demand that triggers these imports. And number two, it also shows the resilience of the global supply chain. We've learned a lot. You know, all the crises that the Admiral and his team and all of the teams here today have responded to in recent years have built that resilience muscle. I like to say that every time we respond together, we're flexing that resilience muscle. And so the fact that we're handling a solid number of containers shows the resilience of the supply chain, the resilience of the American consumer, and as I like to say, the Port of Long Beach continues to be a safe harbor in the sea of trade and geopolitical uncertainty.
Great. And we have a follow-up question also from John Donegan of the Long Beach Post for you, Noel. Can you address reports of declining crude oil shipments off the coast and how that might affect prices for Californians? Should people expect to pay more in the coming weeks, or is it more complicated than that?
You know, we can't speculate on what the price of oil is going to look like a week from now, 2 months from now. All I can tell you is that the Port of Long Beach safely handled the new Corolla. That was the last oil tanker to leave the Persian Gulf to bring oil to America. And we received that oil tanker and we handled it properly. And those 2 million barrels of oil that it brought are going to be put to good use.
Thank you. And we have one more for you, Noel, and this is from another Noel. This is from Noel Fletcher with Transport Topics in Washington, D.C. He's asking, does your system have any capabilities to deter trucking cargo theft?
Well, first of all, it's not every day that I get a question from another Noel, so it's nice to see that there's another Noel out there. Our system is very sophisticated, and what it does is it brings different systems that were already in place together, integrating that flow of information. Over time, we're going to build in additional capabilities because it's not just about protecting the port's infrastructure that enables the flow of commerce, but at some future point, we're also going to ensure that this system provides that defense to all of our industry partners. And that will extend one day to our motor carriers as well. As you heard from President Colonna and the Rear Admiral, you know, we as an industry are becoming increasingly interconnected digitally. And that's good for the flow of cargo. We need data to flow seamlessly so that cargo can flow seamlessly. But when we do that, we're also inadvertently opening ourselves to exposure, because an attack anywhere in the global supply chain can quickly cascade across the supply chain. And this is why we're taking a very strategic, very careful approach in how we integrate these systems to mitigate any of those risks, while at the same time providing defense coverage as widely and broadly as possible.
Thank you. And now we have another question for U.S. Coast Guard Rear Admiral Jeffrey Novak. If you could come back up to the podium, sir. Just pulling this up here. With the World Cup, Olympics, Super Bowl, and America 250 events coming to the LA area over the next few years, how is the Coast Guard prioritizing cybersecurity?
That's a great question. So I think this audience knows that we have significant events coming just days from now as it relates to the beginning of the World Cup 2026 activities throughout California, here in Los Angeles, up in Santa Clara in the Bay Area, and then in the case of the Pacific area, all the way to Seattle. And so we're cognizant of a variety of potential threats to those events, and then you layer on things like America 250 with our upcoming anniversary of 250 years of our nation, and then pivoting forward let's call it 2 years, but really it's less. We're planning today for the Olympics here in 2028. So cyber is but one threat that the Coast Guard is cognizant of and focused on as we look to these events. So I would say here in California, we work very closely with our partners. More broadly, we work with Cal OES, and Chief O'Keefe is here with us today, and others to look across the threat streams of both physical and cyber threats to constantly monitor where we could find events challenged, and it could be in a variety of different ways. And then on the water, your Coast Guard is there 24/7, ensuring that security zones are enforced and that we're looking at where we can best mitigate any activity that could occur to disrupt these events, both in the near term and then certainly as we work our way towards the Olympics in 2028. So thanks for that question.
Thank you.
All right, I'll hold out for one more question if there is one. And if not, we're going to go ahead and welcome back Dr. Hacegaba. But I'd like to thank Admiral Novak and our president of our commission for being here today. If you'd like to close us out.
Thank you, Stephanie. And a special thank you again to all of our guests, our Long Beach Harbor Commission President Frank Colonna, as well as our U.S. Coast Guard Rear Admiral Jeffrey Novak. Thank you for being here, being part of this. And of course, to all of you, all the teams that for weeks and months we're preparing this CDOC unveiling today. Thank you so much. A big shout out to our own Port of Long Beach cybersecurity team for putting this together and making sure that we did it in a way that brought our partnerships that are so vital and important to us together. So this concludes this edition of Supply Chain Insight, brought to you by the Port of Long Beach. For those in attendance today, we will be offering a brief guided tour of our CDOC right after the press conference. And if you're interested in doing that, feel free to let one of our teammates know. Who should they see? Okay, you should see Stephanie, who was just here. Please let her know, especially members of the press. We'd love to offer you a guided tour. And again, to the rest of you and those who are watching online, thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day.